Welcome, everybody, to a new episode of the Mystics on a Mission show. I am your host, Hannah Beer, and I am here today with Chris Ann Donnelly, who is joining us from Canada. Hi, Chris Ann.
Hi there. How are you? I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Hannah.
So good to have you. So, Chris Ann is a really cool branding and marketing and business expert, but she has a very special twist. So she's doing everything in the realm of intuition and spirituality. She's also about to release her oracle deck. So she is a perfect mystic on a mission for this show. And yeah, I'm really excited to have you, Chris Ann. So for everybody who doesn't know who you are and what you do, can you introduce yourself to us, please?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Chris Ann. I have a kind of a varied background. I actually have a branding and design agency that started out as a very conventional agency. I've been an entrepreneur for 13 years, so I've been doing that piece for a long time. And then slowly the standard digital marketing agency thing, it felt less and less like a good fit for who I was or who I was becoming. You know, as I kind of became more aware of where I wanted to go and the type of people I wanted to work with and who I wanted to be, my business started to shift with me. And so I started working more with spiritual entrepreneurs and helping them to launch their businesses, and worked with a lot of healers and people in the health industry. And then slowly that even started to feel like it wasn't the right fit. Even though I still do have that business, it's a totally separate business. I have a full-time designer and a programmer, and we still run that, but it's not really where my focus is right now. In the last, it's been about 2.5 years, I've been focused on more the Oracle deck. So I actually did release the Oracle deck. It was put out last October. And so the Oracle deck is out in the world and doing really well. And then all the opportunities that kind of were connected with that. The Oracle deck is for soulpreneurs and spiritual entrepreneurs and has some marketing advice and some wisdom in there. And I have the guidebook here, just so you know. It's called the Sacred Creators Oracle. So it's a pretty hefty kind of like guidebook even. For those that are on the podcast, it's about 300 pages. So it's a chunky book. And there have been a million like serendipitous, beautiful opportunities that have come about because of that. And so finally, 13 years into entrepreneurship, I'm actually back at a place where I feel like every day I get to my computer, I have no freaking idea what comes next. I don't know what I'm doing. Every morning I wake up and I'm doing something new and I'm like, I have to learn again. So it's kind of exciting. Like I feel like things are more exciting than they have been in a really long time for me. So
beautiful. So how did you even get to become a designer and to do the branding and marketing? What was your journey even to the agency?
So when I first started out, I studied, I had a 4-year degree in design. And near the end of my program, I was in the middle of doing my, we had to do practicum. So I had a 2-month practicum at a design agency. And as I was doing that, I was online writing my thesis, and I was online all the time. Now it was 2004, I think, that I graduated university. Is that right? 2003. And I was online all the time, and I met my husband online, which was really strange back then. My husband's from Chile, and he was doing his thesis, and I was doing my thesis. Like Facebook didn't exist back then. We were on Messenger, I think. And I mean, one thing led to the other, and shortly after university, I went down to Chile. And so I went down to Chile. We're both snowboarders, and I wanted to go to the Andes, so it did make sense. It wasn't just like totally out of the blue. I went down to Chile, came back home, eventually moved down there. And because I couldn't speak Spanish, I had to do something for work. I had the choice to teach English, which is what I did when I first went down there, or start to reach out to English-speaking companies and start freelancing and say, hey, I'm a designer in South America and you can pay me pesos. And and so it was kind of a sink or swim scenario. I mean, I wanted to work in my field. I didn't want to teach English. Um, so I just started doing the freelance online internet thing in the very inception of that, like when it first started, and I started finding clients overseas that way. So it was kind of wild because I don't think I'm the typical entrepreneur. I didn't want to be I didn't really, I mean, it's not that I was like, oh, poor me, I'm an entrepreneur, but it's not what I ever imagined for myself, before it happened. I just kind of fell
Mm.
into it. Yeah. So
Oh,
that was
great.
kind of crazy.
That's such a cool story. So you were writing your thesis, graduating from college with a degree in design. You met a guy online who just so happened to also love snowboarding.
Yeah.
Talk about serendipity. Awesome. And then you moved to Chile and started your business there.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So actually, the full-time designer that I still have is one of the full-time designers that I had hired down in Chile. So she's in Chile, and I'm back in Canada. My husband has since immigrated to Canada. But yeah, it's sort of, life is kind of, gosh, I do these things, and I know from the outside looking in, it's like, oh my gosh, that sounds a little bit crazy, but I just knew that I had to go to Chile to meet him. And I just sort of knew that that's what I needed. And when I look back on it, like if I ever have a daughter that's that crazy, I would be so afraid for her. But it didn't ever feel crazy at the time. It felt like it would just had to be. So yeah.
Yeah, I can so relate to this because I moved to Bali on a whim before, and then I moved to Amsterdam, and then I just did all of those things. And looking back, I'm just thinking I had no clue what I was doing. I had zero information and I just did it because there was a voice inside of my head nudging me to do it. And everybody else started asking me, like, why are you doing this? Like, what's there for you? Like, what's your plan? Like, what are you going to do in Amsterdam? And even now, when I meet people, people always say, like, why Amsterdam? And I can't help but shrug because I don't know. Like, that's what I'm finding out now. I'm starting to discover why I moved to Amsterdam now that I'm here. Or I discovered why I moved to Bali when I left, to move to Germany after Bali. And so it's really interesting when we follow those inner nudges and those calls, and then looking back, it somehow all lines up. But in the moment, it's really brave to have that faith and to follow it.
Oh, for sure. And it's I have a bucket list, or it was like a life wish list that I wrote when I was probably about 17 in high school. And I totally forgot that Chile was on it, and I found it years later after I came home. And on that list, there were things like move to Whistler, which I had done, and learn how to kickflip. Like, I was a skateboarder when I was little, all these things. And on it was go to the Andes. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, like, it was like, I knew that I had to go, but I didn't know why I wrote that at the time. And, I don't even remember that that was on the list. Like, there are things on the list that I still haven't done, but it's pretty cool to just tune into those things once in a while, or as much as we can, in order to, I think it's the way we live our best life. Yeah.
I love that story. So something I've started doing a couple of weeks ago was to just, send in my requests to the universe and just totally overdo it, to just, write all those lists. Because just like you, looking back at all of my bucket lists and all of my desires, a lot of it came true. A lot of it also didn't come true. But who knows, And so now I read in a book that's called Becoming Magic. One of our past podcast guest, Lucy Sheridan, recommended the book. And in that book, there's this really cool exercise where you basically take a box and you label it the God box. And you, like, whenever there's a wish popping into your mind, you just write it down, you put it in the box. You write it down, you put it in the box. And so basically you have a box full of wishes, and every time, you put a new one in, there's a bigger chance that you forget about the old one. So
Yeah.
the old ones have an easier time coming into your reality. So
For
basically,
sure.
you're just being so greedy, overdoing it all the time. So, you're asking, and it's almost like getting those wishes out of your system so that you can forget about them as fast as possible. And then, serendipity kicks in and we end up in Chile and we end up moving to Whistler and we end up doing all those things that we've totally forgotten about, but somewhere they were logged, somewhere there was like an angel or, however it works in the
Yeah.
universe is like working on that.
Yes,
That's so cool.
I fully believe that I mean, I've never heard of that particular way of doing it with the box, but there's lots of other ways that we can use to kind of override our unconscious mind and just allow things to flow and to quickly forget stuff. I really do believe that we don't need to force it. I'm sure that your
Mm-hmm.
guest was similar. It just kind of happens. And it's great to overdo it because you can put, when I look back at that list, I think, yeah, there were maybe 4 or 5 things that were these giant things, one of them being moved to Chile. And the other one, I wanted to go to Nepal. And so those 2 things, I mean, maybe Nepal will still happen in my life, but I wanted to live in one or the other. And I think that I could only have done one because whichever one happened would have changed my life so significantly that it was sort of like 2 possibilities, 2 potentials. And as soon as you step onto one path, the rest of the path unfolds and the other one gets left behind. So.
Mm-hmm. I love that because we couldn't possibly know which would be better for us, But why not ask and just, it's like saying I'm open to this, I feel like I do all these things for myself to just get all that wanting, all that lack out of my system and to just say, I'm open. It's almost like saying, okay, I know there's all this stuff in store, for me, and I'm just going to open up for it.
Yeah, beautiful.
So I also want to ask you about your transition from running the agency, which you're still doing, into the current state of your business where you're, it almost seems like you're a little more creative, you're a little more flying by the seat of your pants, being led by your intuition. So what triggered that change?
Actually, it was a couple of horrible experiences, to be honest. We all have our repeating lessons, based on our own patterns or some people will say it's the frequency we put out and what we manifest. I was constantly manifesting a similar client and in different degrees. And so I had 2 in a row that were really horrible experiences, a lot of work, a lot of imbalance in the relationship of power. Both 2 people in a row I had. One was an 18-month project, one was a 12-month project, and both of them at the end totally either stopped paying or couldn't pay, or they were just these people that would get out of control with their big vision, and then all of a sudden they've got nothing left in the bank and 12 contractors that they haven't paid. And so both of those affected me really dramatically, where financially I was in, like my agency they always had other things going on and I was okay and I always did well, but these were big chunks of money. And it wasn't as much about the money, to be honest. It was more about how I felt about having allowed myself to be put in a certain position, to be taken advantage of again, walked into the same experience again. So finally it kind of clicked where I was like, fool me once, shame on me, but fool me twice, like this is my fault. How am I manifesting this into my world, instead of playing the role of the victim like I had the first time, like poor me, So the second experience, which was almost identical but worse, it just got the sum got bigger, how I felt got worse. How I was treated was even, it was even more of an abusive relationship actually. And so I was just kind of in this place where the first big horrible client experience pushed me to start this blog that was called The Modern Curio, where I was really finally saying, I'm tired of pretending to be this, what the industry wants, because on some level it's still not working, right? Or I felt like it wasn't working. And so I started this blog where I was like, I'm going to be more me. And I started to just talk about the things I was interested in, curious about. I had been a closet runes person for a long time. I'd been playing with cards. I'd done my Reiki. I worked with an energy healer when I lived in Chile, and I didn't ever tell people about that. So I kind of started to put it out online as a way to express that part of myself. Then I got the second opportunity forgot about that, jumped into that opportunity for 18 months. And when that kind of crumbled, I felt so much push to, you should have stayed on that. You should have stayed kind of over playing on this blogish sort of site that you have no idea how it's going to make you money, but that you felt really happy doing. So I kind of jumped back into that. And from that, things started to just snowball. And I had the idea for the Oracle deck. And I started being really discerning about the people I started working with. And I stopped taking on clients that were big fish clients. And I started working with small solopreneurs that were, one person shows and healers and doing really good work, who you would think I would make a lot less money. But it just so happened that I don't know how it happened. I just looked at my bank account one day and I was like, my bank account? Really? It was way less work, way more fun, and way more money. It just kind of happened when I started being more honest, I guess, with what I wanted and where I wanted to go and who I wanted to be. So that transition was scary for me to put some of those things out into the world. I actually had a dual Instagram account for a really long time. In about 2013, I opened up a second Instagram account where I could just play with some of the visuals and play with some of these aspects of me that wasn't connected to my circle, my social circle, my friends. And then eventually that's the only one that lives and the other one got shut down. So yeah.
Beautiful. So I would also love to ask you a little bit about intuition. I know that has become a big part of your business. How do you hear or see or sense or know or feel your inner guidance? How's that for you?
So that's such a good question, because I still question that a lot myself, because I think it's so subtle. It is so subtle that sometimes we see these synchronicities or serendipities and I think, gosh, am I making that up? But I think that is the key. It's like just to trust that whichever one when you pay attention to something or when you notice something that's synchronistic, there is a reason for that. And so for me, it's really being aware of the signs that come to us all the time. So trying to stay in a state of awareness, and that's not possible to live your life 100% all the time aware of everything, but I do my best to journal it. I do my best to log it and to feel into, anything that comes up in duplicity. Like I think about something and then the next day someone tells me about it, or, I see something that reminds me of it. It's like, okay, there's something there. And so I really pay attention to synchronicity. I think is the biggest one for me. Then, of course, I actively push my intuition as well through things like reading cards and journaling and those, and actively searching. There's that seeking piece. And I don't know if the seeking piece actually helps the intuition or if it's just the intention. It's like, I feel like the pulling cards is like telling the universe, hey, I want information. So whether it gives it to me in that moment or in something synchronistic tomorrow, I still get it. So yeah, I mean, it's intuition has been a huge part of it. But you know what? It wasn't as much when I think about the transition from my old business to my new business, and my new business being so much happier, so much more profitable, so much less stressful. I mean, there's night and day. I would never choose to go back ever. It wasn't as much intuition because I always knew. It was just finding the courage to say, I'm going to take this on. It wasn't, because it wasn't like it was I'm going to intuit that I need to do this. No, I had this underlying desire to share that part of me. I had this underlying desire to put my stories out in the world and connect with other people who were talking about spiritual things. And I had a lot of fear around that for a really long time. So it was just shedding that fear that made all the difference.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I have a similar belief where I feel like guidance, it's almost like I'm standing under a shower, or a cloud, and it's like showering divine guidance down on me. And it's more about saying, okay, like I have my bucket now, I'm willing to catch some of it. I'm willing to receive some of it. And then it comes through in so many different ways. And
Yeah.
I also really resonate with what you said about needing to grow into it, needing to get the courage, needing to work through the fears. Because I feel like we know it's just oftentimes that we say we're not intuitive, or we say can't hear it, or it's not clear for me, or I need to consult my psychic, my cards, or anything like this. But oftentimes it's not really a surprise. We've had those desires for a long time, or even clearly it's so obvious in our life, like what you said about your two clients, the 12-month contract and then the 18-month contract. I mean, that's a pretty clear sign. And
Yeah.
still, it's not just about receiving intuitive guidance, but it's also about being big enough to be able to follow it. And
Mhm.
that's a piece that we just, in my opinion, that we just can't skip. Like, we still need to work through our fears. We still need to get those blocks out of the way. When we're being shown what our next step is, doesn't mean that we're necessarily ready to take that step. It still means that we have to grow into the step. We have to become, you know, energetically bigger than that next step so that we can take it, so that we can really do it.
For sure. Yeah.
So I also wonder, what did you learn from taking on those two clients, from making that switch? Like, if there's one thing you could tell your younger self as she was
Mhm.
going through that process, what would you tell her?
Oh, there's so many things. There's a sense of self-worth is coming up in my mind, like as a biggie. The and this connectedness that I believe to be true. I had this limiting belief that um, that I was my work. So in order, and this underlying desire to be liked. I mean, a lot of us have that, right? And so I was working. I was navigating in the world in a way that um, that I would overgive, because if they liked my work, then it meant that they liked me, and I was um, really pushing to find that I am liked. It was really important for me to work with that and to feel like I was liked in the world. And my work, and if someone approved my work, that was a direct reflection of like how good a person I was, which is they're not linked. But somewhere in my system they were. I had that limiting belief. So I worked through that with a coach, actually. And as soon as I let that go, like, I am not my work, and like, if they love my work, they could love my work and still dislike me, or they could not like my work and still like me. But I couldn't. In my mind, in my system, that it just logically made sense, but I didn't feel that. So I had to work through that. And then as soon as I separated, like, I am not my work, um, life has been so much easier.
Mm.
Yeah. So I had to work through some things. Just, we all have our icky, kind of sticky, energetic spots, and for me that was a big one. So most of my money blocks were around that. Was that, this direct need to be liked. So I would, like, you know, I would work, like, I love the work that I do. So I'm 13 years an entrepreneur, but so I mean, I've got a ton of experience and a ton of great business experience, but I also had a lot of bad experiences where I would discount too heavily, or I would even forget to, I mean, money was so not my payment. My satisfaction wasn't my motivator, to the point that there would be times where we'd have like 6 or 7 projects going on, and I would totally forget to even send the invoice to one client because I didn't care. I was getting paid. I had enough. Like, it was just like, okay, yeah, let's just do the work. If they said, we love the work, we love the design, then I was happy. Right. So there was that, like, this kind of weird, I just put myself in a weird position with people where now I'm much more, I've got better boundaries around that. So,
Mm.
yeah.
I love this so much. I feel like that comes up with many people who are entrepreneurs, where we try and satisfy some deeper need through our business and we're not even aware of it. Like, for me,
Yes.
when I started my business, I always wanted to prove myself. And I also wanted to know that I'm smart, because I didn't believe it myself. I thought that if somebody else said that I was smart, that I would finally believe it. But that's obviously not true, because
Yeah.
my own opinion of myself matters the most. And also, when I see other people get started as entrepreneurs, it's really interesting why we choose to do what we do.
Yes.
Oftentimes coaches become coaches because they want to be heard, not necessarily because they want to learn a new profession and learn the art and science of coaching and healing people, but oftentimes there are other needs that tend to get in the way. And I'm a big advocate of bringing those to the light and really being upfront about why we choose to do the work that we want to do.
Mhm.
And I love your example of not charging the money that you guys agreed on, because you kind of had your needs fulfilled by people saying, "You're awesome, Chrisanne. We love
Yeah.
your work." It's really interesting how then filling those holes and remembering that we're worthwhile. It doesn't matter if other people like me or if they don't or whatever their story is about us, because as long as we like ourselves, as long as we don't reject ourselves, nobody else can.
Mhm.
This is
Absolutely.
really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I really think that entrepreneurship is like self-help 101. You can't do it well without figuring out what you're good at and what you're crappy at and what you need to what you need to do better, right? Or else your business will not succeed. And so it doesn't matter if that's not necessarily even a spiritual thing. Just tends to go deeper when you're more connected to yourself, or when you're more connected to, when you want to know more and you want to explore that, that side of you. So yeah, for sure, it's kind of a crazy ride, but I mean, it's an amazing one too. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, what are you most passionate about in your work right now?
Oh, there's some good ones there. So one of the big things for me, I've got two pretty big passions or desires that I am working on with other people right now. I want people to know that they are intuitive, that and how to follow their own intuition. I want people to stop giving their power away and stop putting people on pedestals and stop saying, tell me what to do. I mean, it's great to work through a lot of this stuff with a coach I mean, I'm a business strategist. Work something through with a strategist makes sense, but never let them shadow your own intuition. And so, I mean, I was actually had the opportunity. My deck is currently in Nordstrom's, and they're pop in right now, and it's been an insane ride where I had my deck highlighted on goop.com, and then Nordstrom contacted me and said, oh, we want to put your oracle deck in our pop-up shop for, it's for 5 weeks. And so last weekend I was at Nordstrom, and I was doing like a meet and greet and a book signing, and I had a lot of people who wanted their cards read. So it ended up I had about 5 hours of a full line of just sitting there reading people's cards. And I'm not, by profession, that's not what I do. I mean, I do read cards with my clients, but it's during like a 1 hour long business strategy session. So for me, it was something that was something I'd never done in public like that, in quick, short readings. But what was important to me in that moment was sitting down with people and saying, we're going to pull these. I want you to pick a card. I'll pick a card. And then we're going to read them together. Because I didn't want them to say, tell me what it means. It's much more about, well, you know what it means. What connections are coming up in your mind right now when I give you the meaning of the card? Because that's how it all works with every reader. Even if you think, or they allow you to think, that they're the ones that are foretelling or making these connections, it's really not. They may say the word, whatever the message is, you're the one that's taking it from your heart and your mind and putting the pieces together and making it relevant to yourself. So that piece, that we're all intuitive, is huge right now for me, as is the sense of magical thinking and helping people to really dig into that and fall into full belief that magical thinking is very real and that it can work for them. Those two things are huge on my mind right now.
Mm. Can you explain to us a little bit about what you mean when you say magical thinking?
Sure, yeah. So magical thinking, I mean, it's really the sense of knowing, trusting that, that your mindset can change your reality, knowing that when you really believe something will happen and working towards it and setting intention and putting it out there that that your world will change. Magical thinking is the belief that serendipity is real. It's all of those little nuances of giving yourself the power to change your world and your existence. And it is a term that they used in the 80s, I think, to kind of, it was like magical thinkers were very debunked by science. It was the flip side of it. It was like, oh, they're magical thinking, that if they believe this experiment will work, it will work. But now we're seeing that that is actually proven in science. And we've got amazing things coming up like epigenetics, where we know that our mindset is actually turning our DNA levers off and on. I mean, there's so much cool stuff out there that's backing magical thinking that, yeah, you can see I get really passionate about it, because the way our beliefs, our feelings, our emotions, and our mindset has so much to do with the way we perceive our reality. And it's so much to do with the opportunities we see in front of us. Like, if you believe you're not going to have any opportunity, you're not going to see them when they're falling all over you, right? So that sort of thing, really helping people to dig into their beliefs around our abilities to change our reality.
Mm. Oh, that's so timely for me because so for every year, I always sit down in a meditation and I receive a download of what I am to work on that year.
Mm-hmm.
And I also work with goddess archetypes in my work with clients. And so the goddess archetype I got for the year 2017 was the creator destroyer goddess. So she is the one who destroys everything and then creates everything again. And so one of the shadow qualities I have to work on this year is taking myself seriously as the creator of my own reality. So creating my own reality is my topic this year. And so far, I've studied family constellation therapy. It's what you said, where up to 8 generations of patterns and trauma is stored in our DNA that is directing how we perceive the world, what we do in the world, what's possible for us, what's not possible. Second thing I studied was hypnotherapy, going deep into the subconscious mind. And now I'm doing a lot of energy healing around basically everything, which leaves me totally broken open. And it's like everything that my deepest stuff is being cleared out. And it's really, I felt like for a long time I was kind of turning my back on the whole manifesting thing because I felt like it just didn't resonate at all with me. I felt like there was so much talk about manifesting, but it just didn't resonate at all. I just couldn't. And now it's starting to change again because I feel drawn to very specific teachings and to very specific tools and, really getting deeper into my belief system and clearing out any beliefs and acknowledging that my beliefs do create my reality and who I am does create my reality. But I just feel like oftentimes we've been talking about manifesting so much that it's just become so confusing. At least for me, for a long time, I was like, I don't even know. Like, this is very stressful for me. I have to do what all the time? I have to say how many affirmations, I have to want all this stuff. It just actually didn't feel good at all. And now that I'm, really, it's almost like I'm resetting my entire system. Like I'm clearing everything out, all of my family stuff, all of my subconscious beliefs. I'm just reprogramming the basics. Like, I am lovable. I can take action. I am enough. Just the basics is what I'm programming into my subconscious mind. Everything else has to go. And that has really allowed Source to come through so clearly. Like, I walk around with like this glow of light around me. I have angels all around me. I've never perceived Source so clearly. And it's really interesting how when you throw everything out, how you just fill up with light and love. There's nothing else that could come in besides that, because then you're truly empty and all the programming you've picked up in the first couple of years of your life is basically not there anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to
Love it.
talk to you about this and to hear a little bit about what you perceive as magical thinking, because now I'm getting more interested in it. Now I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Um,
want to know more.
well, so one of the, before I've got a scientific study I'd love to share with you, but before that, I just was like, as you're telling your story, I'm imagining this overview of your story. And, I think a lot of us get caught up in the manifesting piece only because a lot of us, it's easy to jump into the manifesting because it has to do with material things, right? And so when we start this journey, often it's like, well, I want to have more financial stability, or I want to manifest love, or whatever it is, right? And then you hit a roadblock because your system isn't ready. So what I would say, if you were to take a bird's eye view of your journey and look back, imagine you're 10 years in the future looking back, you probably had, you started with the affirmations, you started to change the biological pathways in your brain that like upping your vibe, changing your vibration, right? But there's the biology that happens, the neural wiring that happens. You started to do that and you realize, hey, I hit a roadblock. Manifesting doesn't feel like it's working. So what did you need to do? You started working on all the basics. And I think that you will look back in 10 years and say, I had to hit that block in order to realize I had to do the basics. And then all of a sudden you're going to up level right to where you were asking here. Do you know what I mean? Like it's all
Mm-hmm.
part of the same story. But we hit blocks, and often we feel like it doesn't work because our system is not ready for it yet.
Mm.
Right? Like you said. And so I'm thinking about this study I'm thinking about with our systems being ready. There is, and this is not new science. It's oftentimes some of this stuff, when it comes out, it's not put into the public sphere because it's too weird. So there's and for some reason I think this is from the early 2000s. Actually, I could be totally wrong on the date, but there was a researcher that was studying schizophrenia and people with multiple personalities, and he had people's brains kind of all hooked up to electrodes, and he realized that people, when they would have different personalities come out of their same body, that their energetic patterns, the way their brain was firing, was totally different. So one personality over here would have one pattern, and the personality number two would have a completely different pattern. And the coolest stuff when it came up when he was studying these people with multiple personality disorders was that the person, he had a case where personality number one had diabetes and would go into a diabetic coma physically if they had sugar and they didn't have their insulin shots. But personality two could go out and eat a cake and be totally fine. So it's like the belief system, the wiring, the energy in the brain was totally changing the biology of the body. So that sort of thing fascinates me because it's like it's the only time we could really truly prove that belief changes the body, or that belief changes the physical reality, because you have one body that actually has 4 or 5 different minds that they believe to be real. Right? So they had that happen. That was one with diabetes. There was another, I'm trying to think of the other examples. Diabetes is the one that's coming up. But that stuff to me is just, it's absolutely fascinating. They've done those, like there are quite a few of those examples of chronic pain as well, where one of the personalities has chronic pain and the other one doesn't. So yeah, that kind of thing leads me to think that if we can change the patterns in our mind through magical thinking, through what you were doing, through affirmations, it takes time though. It doesn't happen right away. It takes years to create new neural pathways. So it's that constant doing and doing and doing. Eventually it falls into place.
Mm. Those are such cool examples. I haven't heard of that study before. Thank you so much for sharing it. And what
I
I
think it's
love,
Dr. Bruin, Bruin, if you wanted to look it up. I believe
Bulin?
that's, yeah, Bruin.
Okay,
Or I'm
awesome.
not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but Bruin, I believe. Yeah. That's what
Okay,
memory is serving up.
awesome. I'm gonna research that, Google it, and see if I can include it in the show notes so that we can all do some more research on it. This is really cool, and what I especially love about this example is that in a schizophrenic person, the entire patterning or the biochemistry of their body just changes like that. it's like, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that. And that's, I actually am not really with you on the whole it takes a long time,
Yeah.
because that's something that I deeply believed. I deeply believe that, okay, sure, I can do my EFT, I can do my affirmations, I can do my life coaching stuff because I'm trained as a life coach. And I've been studying psychology for such a long time now. And at one point I was thinking, this stuff takes a very long time, people. This stuff takes such a long time. And obviously in the beginning, it's not being sold as, you have to do this for the next 5 years for it to work. But people say, like, this is the thing that's going to change our life. And, it's not entirely untrue, because it does have the power to do that. But something that I was really interested in as, a coach and therapist and emotional healing person who really wants to help people heal, I wanted to find solutions that, are not like traditional therapy where you don't have to, tap on your body all day long. And so something that for me helps a lot better is, all those new tools that I found. And it's really interesting then to see how quickly it can change. So for example, when I do some family constellation therapy with a client, they go home and their mom calls them and they haven't spoken in years. It's that quick, because in the energy field, you just completely change the wiring, and it's
I agree
irreversible.
with you. I do agree with you. I would thank you for disagreeing with me so that I can make that more clear. Beautiful. No, for sure. Where I was going with it takes a long time is if all you're doing is affirmations and all you're doing is that like typical kind of manifesting stuff, or it's going to take a long time for you to feel into belief. But if you're using energy tools, and if you can just fall into belief in a day, things will shift in a day, right? That's why that schizophrenic brain can change in an instant. The whole body changes, right? So I am totally on board with you, and thank you for having the personality to say that. Is awesome. Because I clearly did not explain that very well.
Oh, that's totally fine. Yeah, sometimes I feel like also after interviews, I'm like, I did not really say that right. I'm not sure if that was clear enough, or I left some stuff out. And I mean, this is like just a conversation, so.
Absolutely. And communication is difficult in the best of times. So absolutely. I mean, it can,
So true.
I do believe that it can happen very quickly as well. When you have belief on your side, if you're manifesting with that kind of doubt, which is where we have to start. We have to start there. Like, is this really going to work? Have an experience where, hey, I need to do something else that's in the way of it working if it's not working, which is exactly kind of, we all go into that. Okay, what else are we doing to clear out our system? So, I do think that, I love it.
Yeah. I'm just so grateful that we all have access to all those different tools, that there are so many different ways to do it. And I almost feel like we get drawn to those things that might not be so powerful, quote unquote, in my experience, in my view. It might be different for other people. But I also feel like they've kind of been prepping me a little bit. And now I'm like ready to just, go like this.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I've just been on this journey for long enough that now I can just be like, okay, so that's a thought I'm holding. 2 seconds later, it's gone. Because I've just, my system is prepped enough to just change my reality in such a short period of time. But it's really cool that all of these different ways are existing, and we can basically just pick and choose how we want to do it, how it works for us, how our intuition guides us to use it, what we're ready for, because you also talked about needing to be ready, and sometimes we need to just grow a little more until our system is prepped enough.
And I think too, one of the biggest things that we forget when I'm thinking about your God box and all the different things we want in life. Sometimes we forget that we put out all this stuff and all of these thoughts and all of these desires without sometimes really digging into what we really want in life. And when we figure that out, what is it that you really want, then that tends to happen much quicker, because you've figured out the big basic underlying desire, the big basic underlying need. So that what we really want in life is so important. And the other thing that I've learned only in the past year, and I'm so grateful for it, is that it's funny because, I look back 3 years ago And I have a great relationship with my husband. I love him to death. Had a super happy life 3 years ago, even though I was going through all of this kind of weird, sticky, coming out of some of those weird, sticky work things. I still was really happy. And I kept thinking, oh, when I make more money, I'm going to feel successful and therefore I'm going to be more happy. Or when I have a nicer house, I'm going to, like I had all of these, like when I have X, I'm going to be X ideas. And none of them were true because I think back to the last year of my life, it's been kind of insane. We sold our house. We bought a house at the base of a chairlift. We have a brand new boat coming next week. Like these material things are like just boom, 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 boom coming in. I am the exact same happy. And it's not that I'm unhappy because I'm not. I have a happy life, but I'm like, those things don't make me any more happy or any less happy. It's just like they're just kind of flowing around and okay, yeah, I'm going to grab onto that. But there's something that I'm really working on right now. It's kind of understanding that piece of, hey, 3 years ago, I should have been able to accept that my life was awesome because it was. Didn't need the extra toys because I was just as happy without those extra toys. The toys are just, it's like they really are just like, it's like I feel like it's like a meal that comes and goes. You know what I mean? They're just things. So I am having this is my big like work right now, personal work, my growth edge is kind of learning to accept that I spent, so many years desiring an outcome that when you get here, it's really not all that different. Like your mindset set point, your happy set point is the same. So I should have dug into that, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago and said, I am happy, therefore I'm successful. I'm happy, therefore my life is amazing. I'm happy, therefore, instead of all of these external things that I felt like would make it even better. It's not that, we need comfort. We need our basic needs met. Having a great relationship is, something on the top of everyone's mind. But beyond that, they're just things, and that has been that's been a huge eye opener for me because then now I'm like, I don't need to work super hard for those things anymore, because I know they're not going to make me any happier. I don't know if that makes any sense or if I just sound like I'm like out and yeah, there's something that I thought I just turned that off. Sorry, my phone is buzzing. I hope that it's not overly.
No worries at all.
Yeah.
And it does make a lot of sense. I feel like oftentimes we get so attached and we think the source of our fulfillment will be people, conditions, things. And it's interesting when we find the true source of our fulfillment. If everything was taken away from you right now and then even a little bit more, what would fulfill you? Like, what is it that's going to sustain you? If a tsunami hits right now, if an earthquake or a tornado hits right now, what's a thing that's going to sustain you? And to really tap into that source, like for me, it's spirit. For other people, it might be something else, or, they might describe it differently. But I love what you're saying, because then you're always happy and then you can truly play. You're not so attached to your life circumstances so much anymore. And you can just, create whatever is, fun for you right now. You can just receive those things and, they don't have that much power over you anymore.
Yeah. For sure they don't. I'm not obsessing about anything, I don't really want any one thing, right? It's more about relationships, my growth, my own personal journey, my loved ones. That is I think that's the seed for me anyways. That's the base
beautiful.
of everything good. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Chris Ann, for this amazing, amazing conversation. For everybody who would like to get in touch with you, who would like to learn more about your Oracle deck, about your work, how can they do that?
Oh, so they can find me at www.chris-ann with an e.com. pretty simple to find me. I'm on Instagram as well. My oracle is called Sacred Creators Oracle. So if you Google that, I'll come up.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Everybody else, get on over to hannahbeer.com/show for all the show notes. If I'm also going to include all of the website links, Instagram links, everything we talked about today, and as well as Chris Ann's bio. And please also let us know how you felt about the conversation today, any takeaways you had, what you agreed with, what you didn't agree with. We would love to hear from you guys. Thank you so much for your time, Chris Ann.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
It really was. Have a wonderful week, everybody.